All right, this was about George Rivera, man, aka Boy George. Y'all wanted it, teenage millionaire out the Bronx, did it big, for the Latinos. You already know what it is, the Boricuas, So y'all wanted, I'm gonna give it to you. Sit back, I'm gonna give you the ride, man. I know Fat Joe don't gave you a little bit. Everything was accurate. Fat Joe's official. Let me say that. The night I got arrested, I was gonna. Well, we was going over to I like to just ride. We was going over to the sports bar up on Tremont. Me, him, Showbiz, AG, and the whole crew. But sit back and let's just enjoy this ride. All right. All right, you know what it is. Unique Mecca Audio, man. This one's about George Rivera, a.k.a. Boy George. So sit back, enjoy the ride, and know where we getting ready to go. George Rivera, right? They call him Boy George, Not the singer. We talking about the original official gangster Boy George. Now, Boy George was born in the Bronx around 1968. They ain't got an exact date on it, so they say 1968. You know what I mean? Now, before his first birthday, his father left him in charge of being the man of the house, which often included, George moving around at different locations. This like a single mother, raising her children in the Bronx during that time in New York City because everything was out of control. By 1970s, the Bronx had what they call an economic collapse, all right, where gangs and dealers would strive. That's when it was no law in New York. You do what you want to do. You didn't have to worry about being arrested because if you did, you could buy your way out of it. But that was then. We already know it's not like that now. By the 1980s, the drug trade was off the chart. Off the chart. You could literally go outside on any block and just start selling drugs. And only thing you had to worry about was the locals in the neighborhood. If you're from the neighborhood, if you're not from that neighborhood, you don't need to be over there selling no drugs because you better believe that you're going to get all kinds of resistance, right? He started hustling with the Torres brothers. But first, one of his friends, Mike, they put him into the hustle game. That's where he first started hustling, doing his thing. And then he met the Torres brothers. He hooked up with the Torres brothers. Big shout out to the Torres brothers so you could understand. He started hustling with their organization, and they was distributing heroin. You know what I mean? So at that time, they distributing heroin so that you understand. Now, they used the money to purchase properties. They even opened up a $30 million mall in Puerto Rico. A $30 million mall back in the late 80s in Puerto Rico. So you already know what kind of money he was getting. That's Boy George. That picture there is from the yacht that he went on. So I just want to give y'all a little bit about the history so you understand. Now, he had a raffle, right? When he had the yacht trip for his party in 1988. They had a yacht trip and they was giving out raffle tickets, right? They had raffle tickets that was worth $130,000. So imagine you go to a party, right? And you ain't even got to pay because they wasn't even charging. You know what I mean? This was just for the people. So imagine you go to a party that you invited to and they got a raffle for $130,000. Now he had BMWs, Benzes, Porsches, Saabs. He had it all. But I'm gonna tell you about a couple of the cars so you understand. All right. So now we already got that done. I'm gonna show you what George looked like back in the day when he was hustling on the block. See, this is him at the party. He threw on the tux. He was doing what he got to do. All right. So then now, this is him on the block. Y'all remember those sheepskins back in the day? That's George overlooking his empire. That's one of the pictures that they, got of the homie from back then. So that's George on the block. So now he buying Mercedes-Benz, jumping out like that, with a straight hood gear. And we got to remember, back then, we didn't have Carl Kanai. We didn't have, when he was running, we didn't have, what's that? All we had was Carl Kanai, and Cross Colors was out back then and used and damaged. That was the fashion. And, so they didn't have any, FUBU and Sean John and all of that. So you had to know how to put your gear together. That's why the rappers looked towards us back in the day as far as who they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. But now, George had it was a Porsche that he had. I'm going to tell you about the Porsche. I feel like riding. He had a Porsche, right? The Porsche had a joint that if the police is chasing you, it dropped oil from underneath. You hit a button in the car while you're driving 100 miles an hour on the highway. You hit the button and it just spills out about 5 gallons of oil on the road so that when the police come, the oil get in their tires, and when they go to turn the corners to maneuver, the joint spin out of control. Not promoting nothing, just giving y'all what it was. Then they also had the joint that had the license plate slide to the side. So you got a license plate with a New York license plate and the police behind you and you're about to jet off. So you push a button and the license plate, slide to the side. Oh, mine's flipped over, where it flipped over to the next side. And when it flipped to the next side, they see a whole nother license plate. So when they call that license plate, you ain't planning on stopping anyway. So it ain't like you're worrying about a stolen license plate. But, they never got your license plate. Then they also had this joint that they had where they used to drop tax. And there's a big bucket under the car was made into the car. And you push the button and it dropped, big nails and tacks. So that when the police drive it, it'll get in their tires and flatten their tires to get away. So that's why they called it the James Bond joint. So that's how, he was moving around when he was dressed like that. I ain't got no pictures of me up there. I would have showed you a picture of me too, just so you understand. So you can't imagine what it was like living in this era where you ain't the only one getting the bag. There's other dudes getting the bag, and you respect the hustle because your bag big enough, so you not counting the next dude's bag, not hating on the next dude's bag or none of that. Now, this is George now in prison, Right, let me show you George now in prison so you can see. Wow. That's how George looked now. This is how I left George when I left him. I ran into George in, first time was in 1995. 1995, we was in Lewisburg together. Boy George comes in. I was there first. Me, Big C, I think Pete Rolock, that's Pistol Pete father. Fat Stevie, who else? Fat Stevie, Monsanto, his brother, Pete Monsanto, Big O, my man Prime Minister was there, Miles was there. If y'all from that era, y'all know who Miles is. You know what I mean? A lot of them don't even know these names because they only know them when we come on YouTube with them. But Miles was there. Miles had the big ticket on the compound, and George just got there. And Lil Anthony was there too. I think that was Boy George co-defendant. Lil Anthony was official dude. I hope he get out too if he's not already out. But we had all the men there on the compound, so you understand. So now Miles on the compound, George on the compound. George come in. George was a hustler. He grew up hustling. You already know that. So when he came in, he started hustling the administration. So he got caught with a charge for alleged introduction of narcotics into Lewisburg when we was in Lewisburg. It's a prison story too. So we're in Lewisburg. He get caught up where, I'll get a little bit of it because, one of the homies went out there to go get some weed, and he must have had too much or whatever, so he gave George something to bring in. I'm just paraphrasing because I don't want to get into the intricate details of it. Now, he had 2 months, so he gave George some. George was out there on a visit, I think with his mom's, and George tried to bring the weed in, and he got caught up with the weed, and he lost his visit for a year. So when you lose the visit for a year, they had a big monkey cipher that was, dealing with the unit manager. Right? The Cipher Monkey Cipher was from the Bronx. Big old black dude looked like Terminator. Big ugly dude. He used to take his sweatpants and get like a small sweatpants, and he was like 6'2". And he's wearing these sweatpants like their leggings is what they look like on him. And he had the long fingernails, and I don't know, I know he used to get the unit man used to give him the makeup and the lip gloss. And this dude sitting there, big old ugly dude, was trying to look like a woman. But that's who we had to go to if we got in any trouble, because the unit manager was like the captain, the warden of the unit. So whatever happens goes through the unit manager. So if you get a sanction, the unit manager could put it into the warden, recommend they cut your sanction in half or whatever. So George go to, the Cipher, Monkey Cipher, and tell him, Man, I'm trying to get my visit back. They took my visit for a year. So he Cypher, Monkey Cypher said, all right, let me go talk to my people. So he could talk to his peoples, come back. And they said, all right, we'll just tell them to give us at least 3 to 6 months, clean and, show us that, he's not going to be Boy George from the street and he going to roll with us in here. So I used to be getting up in the morning, early morning, and George out there with his little sweatsuit on, and he got the little bucket, with the water and another little bucket, like a paint bucket. And he's standing on the paint bucket and he's wiping the windows down and he's wiping off the windowsill. And this is in the unit. I mean, this is in the hallway. This is not even a unit. So we going to breakfast and everybody sees George out there wiping the windows and carrying on. There ain't no diss to George. We manipulating the system because he had to show he was willing to work. So every time the police went by, a unit manager went by, they always saw George doing something. He's sweeping the floor. He mopping the floor. He telling them, give me wax, I could do the floor. And, he what we call tap dancing, but it's not a bad thing when you manipulate the system with that tap and the dance. So after 6 months, they give him back his visit and, he go back. But the bottom line is the joint that he had that he was bringing in wasn't even his. But of course, you already know he ain't tell on the comrade. He just wore that, because that's how men do. So, that was, me and Boy George at Lewisburg. I'm going to give you another one with him too, in another joint in a minute. But just so you understand, this young man at 18 years old, he was making over $200,000 a week. He was a young millionaire. He had a big drug organization and he was doing his thing, just so that you understand where we at. He had, like I said, he had BMWs, Porsches, Saabs, he had everything. They even had a joint back then that y'all might even know now. It was a European car called a Peugeot, So he had that. He used to take, expensive trips. Like I said, he threw the yacht party. He had a solid gold belt with diamonds. Picture that, a solid gold belt with diamonds with his Lee jeans on or his Calvin Klein. Because that's all we had then was that Calvin Klein, and I think Devil was the other major, and Jordache. Y'all don't even know these stores I'm talking about. But these are the old-fashioned that we had to work with. They had some jeans called Jordache. If y'all know what the Jordache and the Devils is, put them in the comments and school these youngins so they understand what's going on. Now, George controlled 15 different locations in the Bronx and Manhattan. This is a young man, 18 years old. He got 15 different heroin spots that was crushing him. 18 years old. I mean, heroin was selling, damn near more than crack, But with the heroin, they had to have it. Crack, they had to have it. You know how it is. So, we ain't going to put one against the other. But y'all put it in the comments what you think was selling more, the heroin or the crack back in the 80s and 90s for my old timers. We already know the crack was the big epidemic they threw on the news. But before the crack, they threw the heroin on the news. And I know dudes used to get up in the morning and you see them sitting there all hunched over talking about their bones hurt. They need a couple of dollars. They got to get their morning fix. That's what they call it, the morning fix. So, you throw them a little $20. They go get 2 bags. They hit that up. Then they go running. As soon as they get that bag, they straighten up. They go running right to Fordham Road, 125th, down to Delancey Street, down to 42nd Street, and they go boosting and jostling or whatever, and they take the money and they bring it back uptown, and they sell us everything that they got. And, we do what we got to do. They do what they got to do. So after, that's just how it moves. But, he had 15 different locations, man. 15 different locations selling heroin. At 18 years old. He had grown men working for him. I'm talking about grown men was working for him. Now, George, right? So you understand. Imagine going to a party and you driving $100,000 car. And you just know you the man. So you sitting outside, you got the music bumping, your Dapper Dan on, and you chilling on your silk suit. I used to buy these silk short sets. The shirt was like $800. And the shorts was like $1,200, for a short set. But that was silk, and that's how they did it back then. We used to get it from down there like Layton's, down in Midtown. My old timers from Brooklyn, let them know what Layton's is. See, Layton's was like the A.J. Lester for Brooklyn. Harlem and the Bronx, we had, A.J. Lester, and then Brooklyn, Queens, they used to cross over and go right down to Midtown and go to, Layton's and cop their joints. Then they got the Clark store across the street. You go buy your Wallabies. See, I'm just hitting you on with a little fashion so you understand. I've been fly. You know what I mean? I've been fly. I learned that from back in the day. But that's Big George now. George in the joint, And I'm not going to get into too much of what's going on with him in the prison because that's his current situation. They already know what happened with his past situation I just spoke on. George fighting to get out. I know that George filed a motion to get out, and they had a law that came out called Miller versus United States in the Supreme Court, and they said that you can't give a person that's under 25 a life sentence. And George caught his case was like maybe 2021. So he was under 25 and his indictment started when he was like 16, 17. So he fit that perfectly. So George filed the motion. And when he filed the motion, he wound up losing the motion. He won the motion because they said that he qualified, but they didn't want to release him because of his prison record. So they said he would have been a danger to the community, or else George would have been home before me. But I still feel it in my heart, George gonna come home because that was a bull crap ruling because they tried to hold that he's a danger to the community. If the Supreme Court said a juvenile can't get life, it don't matter what he did in the prison. And especially when he already got 30 years in the prison, he ain't killed nobody. But, you know, George do his thing, man. Anywhere he go, he make moves. Anywhere he go, he's respected. So you understand, he has no problems in the joint because one thing George is not is a rat bastard. George is 100% on man time. For those of y'all that don't know, I might give y'all a little bit more about him. I'm just trying to keep it limited and just give y'all a little, you know, synopsis on who Boy George is because y'all asked me to, you know, break down who Boy George is for you, you know. But George went in at 18, right? Let me tell you this because I feel like riding. I feel like riding. Let me tell you how this go. I went in at 29. I came home at 56, I think. So when I came with 56, I still felt, you know, I still felt like I was 29. In 2020, I still felt like I was the same age I was in 93 when I got locked up at 29 years old. And that's how time do us, you know. We get stuck where we last was out here when everything was moving fast. And then everything switched up. But George went in at like 2021, like I said, you know. Young, I know he's under 21. But so that means that George's mentality is still at 21 years old, even though his wisdom was at 91 years old. You know, so he's still got the little boy in him. He's still Boy George. You know what I mean? But he's straight man, so that's not a diss because you know the rat bastards and flip-flop wearing in public trolls look for anything to say. You know, we call him Boy George because he was young. You know, he's a little boy out there getting money. But George was doing his thing, and even in the joint, he's still a funny dude, man. You know, he's still a funny dude and a lot of fun to be with. And, you know, but put that work in. Y'all already know he put that work in. You know, I'm not going to get into his gang affiliation or his alleged gang affiliation. But, you know, George got along with everybody, man. It was just like being that George is Spanish and George was always about getting the money. It's like when you deal with your own, meaning, you know, you already know that mean blacks. When you deal with your own in a joint, they take it that, you know, they could do what they want to do with yours. And you're not going to do nothing because you family. You know? So to prevent not doing nothing for them, you let them keep that. And then you just move on and do your thing. Then after they spend that, then they want to come back and give you a sob story and try and beg you to do something else for them. So George didn't deal, you know, with a lot of the black dudes because a lot of them was on some bull crap, didn't know how to pay. And then, you know, meaning borrow money. And then now it's an excuse when it's time to pay. And you ain't trying to put those Bethlehem and nobody. Big shout out to Banky Pound for y'all too, man. Check out Banky Pound. I mess with him, right? And you know, so George, you know, just man, all right, let's keep that. But then now those same dudes, they'll get transferred for messing up somebody's money on the compound, and somebody else decide to say that little money you owe me meant a lot to me, so he'll put the joint in them. You know what I mean? So when they get transferred to another joint, they'll go to what they call Oklahoma. Oklahoma is the hub where everybody from all the different jails that's going anywhere from the Midwest to the West Coast meet up. And now dudes that left George, like at Lewisburg, would go say, man, yo, he racist. You know, he don't give black people nothing. He don't do nothing for black people. But George wasn't racist. You hear a lot of people say that. But they say that because he gave a black person one chance to screw him. And then once he screw him off and don't pay, you know, then, you know, he just don't deal with them. And then now that when they come back and they want something else, then now they put the racist card on them. and say that he's racist, but George not racist. George got black co-defendants, you know. And you know what's crazy? I don't like when people say, when white people say, well, I got black friends. And you know what I mean? So I don't want y'all to think I'm saying that when I say he got black co-defendants. What I'm saying is George is one of us 100%, man. He ran in the hood, you know what I mean? He fed the hood. The hood looked out for him, you know, blacks, Puerto Ricans, and Dominicans, everybody. George was just a good, funny little dude, man. And like I said, that's not a shot. That's just New York lingo when I say little dude. Because he was all man, you know what I mean? He was getting plenty money. So you understand. But then now, I'm going to get another one because I feel like riding, you know. I feel like riding. I'm going to get another one. So now, I'm in Lompoc, and I get transferred, and it was plenty of, you know, heroin in Lompoc. I get transferred, and I wind up getting like 3 grams over there. So I get the 3 grams over there, you know, from Lompoc when they sent me over to Florida, and I ran into George again. And I know he about his money, so I tell George, yo, I got 3 Bob grams and heroin. He's like, yo, we in Florida. You know what I mean? Everybody here got gold teeth and dreadlocks, and everybody's a Zoe. Them dudes don't fuck with that out here. All they want out here is weed. You know what I mean? I stayed there for about 45 days, and when I left, I still had the 3 grams. I couldn't even sell it because nobody out there was really dealing with it, you know, and it was just crazy. But, you know, George had to school me that, yo, this ain't like over there. Over here, you got to chill. You don't want to put the heroin on the compound because the police not used to it, because the police see that there's heroin on the compound. First thing they're going to do is they're going to come lock you up, come lock me up, and I don't want to get caught up in your bull crap. So, you know what I mean? Here goes some weed. Go sell some weed. They can put that down so you don't blow the spot up, because they're going to tear every New York cell up, you know, looking for this heroin, because they know these Florida guys, they just get the weed and down there and they make the wine. And that's one thing about Florida, right? When I was in Florida, they some hustling mothers, man. I was in Florida, and all the Florida dudes, I mean, listen, anything you get your hands on, you could sell on the compound. Dudes was selling napkins that they give you in the kitchen, like they give you in a restaurant. They were selling a pack of napkins for 2 stamps. That's 50 cents. But, you know, they get 20 packs of that. They get a couple of books, and they go play a ticket. You know, those are the people that's hustling off the land. They were selling little things like toilet paper. You know, they was selling, you know, oranges, you know, stuff that they didn't sell on the commissary. They sold their notepads, you know, box of pens, you know, they sold everything. Socks from the laundry. They give you socks, but they out there selling socks, and they brought the socks, you know, but that's a hustling town. But that's where I was at with old George last. And yeah, I might tell you about the Lompoc one in the next part if I decide to do it. I just wanted to give y'all a little rundown on Boy George and show y'all some pictures so you can see how he looked. You know what I mean? Just so you understand where we at. All right? So that's Big George right there. Let me show you a close-up, right? I'm going to show you a close-up right now. I'm going to show you this one first. You know, that's how George got tatted up. You know, so that's how he looked now. This is George now with the many tattoos on him, so you understand. All right? That's the man, George. All right? So now we're going to take that one, and then I'm going to show you, you know, a close-up. This is how he was at first without the tattoos. You know? Went in at 19, about 20 years old he went in. But he was 16, 17 years old. They had another one I might tell you about, you know. We got Ralphie from Blue Thunder I might tell you about. And what's the other? Little Hector. I got one about there's a dude that was in the Lower East Side. They call it LES. So y'all from the Lower East Side, put in the comments if y'all want the Little Hector story. You know what I mean? Or, you know, and y'all in Brooklyn, you know, if y'all want the Little Ralphie story, you know, the Blue Thunder story, let me know. Or I'll tell you, you know, Hector. Or I might even tell you about, who else I can tell you about? Big boy that was doing heroin, you know, Spanish, so they know it wasn't only black people getting money, because that's all they see on YouTube. But we got to give our Boricuas and Latinos they joint, you know what I mean? Now, George always dealt with his juvenile friends, the friends that he grew up with. That's how one of his homies got caught up. I'm definitely not going to say his name because he's out now, and, you know, I don't know if he want to be associated with that past life, because he's doing real good. I've seen him since I've been home, and I'm proud of him. You know y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm proud of you, family. You know, and I am going to come see you about that, getting that license that we talked about, you know. What they call that, you know, for construction, I think it is. That's what he do. The heck they call that? I don't know the name of it. I'm talking about getting it. But anyway, you know, so George Rivera, good man, went in as a young man, could have came home, but got in a few situations because he was still young, still, about it, and, got caught up, man. They got caught up. But like I said, George is a hell of a dude. I'm thinking about doing the little Ralphie story, from Obsession. Blue Thunder. I think Ralphie, George was Obsession. I wasn't into the dope, so I don't even keep track of the names. But Ralph was definitely Blue Thunder, and then I forgot what Little Hector was. But those are dudes. And then we also got Miles. Then we got, rest in peace, to Fat Manny. He had a crew they called the Unknown because they didn't even know nothing about him. That's how smooth he moved. That was Fat Manny. That's Hector's cousin. And his co-defendant, Manny's co-defendant was Shamik. Rest in peace to Shamik. He died in the joint. Manny died in the joint, complications of the health. And then we also had True God. Rest in peace to True God. True God, he came home and he passed from complications with health. But, he's one of the only ones that I know of that made it home off of that case. But, rest in peace to the brother, man. But I've been through so much, man. I lost so many good comrades because, all we knew how to do was survive, man. And we wasn't eating right. All the money in the world, we didn't know. All this, now y'all know to drink water and all that. I ain't drink no water back then. I drank quarter waters and Heineken all day, and quarter waters was just when, I'm eating a bag of Lay's chips or, some of those Drake oatmeal and raisin cookies. I used to love the oatmeal and raisin Drake cookies. That's all Project Joint. That's what you know what it is. But, all that wound up coming back to harness. I got prostate issues and, things like that. And we all got different issues from, our intake of the food that we chose to have because we wasn't, literate to as far as, the health, like how now I come home after 27 years, 26 and a half years, and y'all all on point with it, But make sure you cop the book of Ruin Harlem. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter, Unique Mecca Audio, on my Cash App on the screen. I just want to give y'all something for Boy George today, man. I haven't really even been feeling like doing the videos because I'm so disappointed in everything that I'm seeing up there, man. Everything is telling. Which, that's one thing. But when you got people supporting that and they trying to make different justifications. How could you have a question about someone telling? Bottom line, if they tell, they're a rat bastard and they had no reason to tell. It's no what. What if he told because? There is no because. What if they told, and, no, there is no and they had his mother, because they had his wife, because they threatened to take his kids, because they threatened to put his daughter in jail or his mother in jail or the baby mother in jail. There's no reason for telling. Bottom line, you knew that before you hit the street. So that's why I tell the youngins, don't get involved in the street because I don't want you to wind up like the homie Boy George and myself wound up doing all that time. And I want to give a shout out to my man, Lou Sims, Farris, Peter Shue, Ken Do, Bob Lemon. We got all types of, official gangsters, man. Rest in peace to C, Big C, Harry Hunt from Queens. Good dudes. Booby, Black from Miami, JR from Chicago, Kaz and C-Dog, out west. S. Capone. Anybody with no little S. Capone, he ain't little no more, but he was younger than me. I was in Lum Park with him in like 2001. Good brother I'm trying to locate. Man, I love him with all my heart, man. Good dude, man. Straight, stand-up, loyal dude. S. Capone. If anybody know S. Capone, let S. Capone know to contact me. He'll know who I am. You tell him I was with him in Lum Park. But I just wanted to mix it up, give y'all a little something today, man. Make sure you cop the book of Ruin Harlem. Let me see if I can find the book cover, put the book cover up here for y'all real quick. Because I learned how to work all this thing. And, I do what I got to do now, But that's what it is. I come home and I found a lane, I found a lane. I'm doing me. I just sit in my crib and I can turn on the videos and just, pop it out. Subscription bar, and do what I got to do. So I ain't bother nobody. I ain't talking about nobody. I just stay in my lane. That's why, if somebody mentions somebody that I'm cool with and they try and talk about them, I tell them, y'all, don't do that around me, my nigga. Go tell him in his face. Oh, here go the book cover, Not saying they wouldn't, but, that's who you tell it to. Don't tell it to me. All right? Now, that's the book cover. Make sure you cop the book of Ruin Harlem, man. That's the book of Ruin Harlem. Cop the book of Ruin Harlem. And, this has been the Boy George Rivera story, Let me take that back off. And I want to put, the joint back up there. the first picture so that we could go out with that, Big Boy George on the yacht, 18 years old, multi-millionaire. Y'all want the Boy George story, I gave you the Boy George story. Y'all, whoever don't like me riding, you already know what to do. All right, that's how I feel about y'all don't like me riding. Just find somewhere else to go. They got all these channels. I even recommend other channels. You know what I mean? If something I like that I do you don't like, go to another channel. You can come back. If something I do you don't like, you can, delete yourself. Because if you say something stupid, I will block you. That's all I can do because I can't get my hands around your filthy little neck. You know what I mean? So all I can do is, block you the same way I have the power to block you, I have the power to unsubscribe. You know what I mean? Or do what you need to do. But just this is the way I like to ride. No disrespect. I love when the people come over and they keep it respectful and they get in the comments. But this is about Boy George. Let me give y'all this outro real quick because I'm out of here. Oh, make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, man. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, all right? Subscribe if you're not subscribed, all right?
Cheers, cheers, toast the crime, toast the crime, the crime, the crime, the crime.
Fresh out the can of 26, he back on the strip, getting back in the mix. What he mentions a gift. You stand up 10 toes down, and I suggest you pay attention to this. Take a little gully posse and put it in Harlem. He cut from the bottom, came up from the bottom. Drop the book, you should go and get it. The Instagram page and the YouTube, you could go and visit. Then you could consider yourself LinkedIn. Sit front row and get Jews from a Kingpin. How he went through it, so you ain't gotta go do it. To not pay attention would be stupid. Talking about a man that probably put your grandfather on. Probably the reason that him and your grams got along. A man that generated millions on the block, did his time, never squilling to the cops, Mecca audio. Get it live like 2 G's in the 90s. Drop top beamer so shiny. I let shorty go, she was whining. Treat her like my past, she behind me. Spend a couple bands on the Dapper Dan. You be back again, getting green like a Packers fan. No cap, it's a roaring uptown. They be horn uptown, Dominican bust downs. Now we on the positive, we got a lot to give. Now he trying to stop the kids from being inoperative. So take heed, homie, lend it air. He started in uptown, he gon' finish dead. But now it ain't about selling drugs, buying cars. It's about buying property to make the community ours. So we can give back to the youth them, cause they the truth them, and bless up to all the root men.